As the last light of evening fades and the rhythm of the day grows soft, I want to welcome you, truly welcome you, to this space of peace and rest. Whether you are ending the day with gratefulness, with worries, with exhaustion, or with a quiet longing for God, I'm grateful you're here. If you are new to this prayerful place, welcome to the Sacred Heart family, where we lift one another up, where no one prays alone, and where the love of God slowly unravels the knots inside the heart. So take a slow breath. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the weight of the day settle at the feet of the one who sees you, knows you, and holds you. Tonight, God desires to speak gently to your soul. As the day ends, we turn our hearts toward gratitude. Gratitude for the people who have guided us with patience, kindness, or simple presence. Some of their names rise easily to mind. Some guided us quietly without notice until now. Gratitude is a softening of the heart, a reminder that none of us walk alone, and that even in the hardest days, God sends help through human hands. And yet tonight, our gratitude becomes a prayer for something deeper. Humble hearts that follow God's will more than our own desires. It is not easy to surrender our attachments, comforts, or pride, but humility makes room for God's peace, and surrender makes room for His direction. Tonight's scripture reflection from 2 Samuel shines gently on this desire. The tribes of Israel come to David, acknowledging him not merely as a leader, but as the shepherd God Himself chose for them. Their unity, born of obedience, brings peace and purpose to the nation. They lay aside rivalry, ambition, and personal agendas to embrace the will God set before them. And in their surrender, something beautiful happens. A fractured people become a family again. A nation scattered becomes a people of promise. God's will gathers what human desire often scatters. In our own lives, we too are invited to let God lead us in ways that challenge our pride and attachments. Sometimes the things we cling to most fiercely, our plans, our expectations, our need to control outcomes, are the very things that keep us from rest. Bishop Fulton Sheen's words echo through this evening with gentle clarity. What we overlove, we often overgrieve. It is a truth that pierces softly. When we cling too tightly to someone or something, we make an idol of what was meant to be a gift. And when that gift changes or is lost, the grief becomes sharper than it should. But when God is first, when He takes His rightful place at the center, losses hurt less and trust grows deeper. Tonight we rest in that truth. As you settle more deeply into this moment, perhaps you feel the quiet invitation to examine where your heart has held too tightly. Perhaps there are relationships, dreams, habits, or comforts you love rightly. But perhaps there are also things you have overloved, things you fear losing, things that shape your emotions more than God's voice does. It is not wrong to care. God Himself gave you the capacity for love, but it is dangerous when the gift outranks the giver. When something other than God becomes the anchor of your peace, it becomes fragile. And fragile anchors often break when storms rise. Yet God does not come tonight asking you to detach in fear. He invites you to reorder your heart in love. He invites you to trust His choices the way Israel trusted when they came to David. He invites you to follow even when you do not fully understand His timing. He invites you to rest in the truth that His will leads to peace, even when the path toward it feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Your own reflections begin to stir. You think of places where you resisted God's leading, perhaps out of fear or the desire to maintain control. You think of moments where your attachments clouded your discernment or made you anxious. You recognize how easy it is to cling to what feels secure instead of trusting the one who holds all things together. And in these reflections, you begin to feel a quiet nudge from God, not scolding, but inviting. A whisper that says, "Let me lead. Let me guide you where your own strength cannot go. Let me carry what you cannot control." As you ponder these things, your heart softens further, opening like the slow unfurling of petals at dusk. You begin to realize that the end of the day is not just a time to close your eyes. It is a time to open your soul. Nighttime has a way of revealing truths we ignore in daylight. When the world grows still, the heart becomes clearer. And in this evening stillness, a simple truth rises gently within you. Surrender is not loss. It is freedom. The more you follow God's will, the more peace you will feel. The more you release what God never asked you to carry, the lighter your spirit becomes. You think again of the holy souls in purgatory, whom you lift tonight with tenderness. Their own purification is a journey of letting go, of relinquishing attachments, regrets, unfinished desires, all in the light of God's love. They teach us that the heart becomes truly free only when it lets God be everything. Their longing is pure, their hope is steadfast, their trust is absolute. And tonight, as you remember them, something in your own heart learns from their journey. That holiness is not the absence of desire, but the right ordering of desire. You breathe again, slower this time, deeper this time. And in this quiet breath, you sense God's nearness. He is not waiting for you tomorrow. He is not distant, nor silent, nor uninterested. He is here in this very moment. His presence wraps gently around your tiredness, your uncertainty, your hopes, and even your failures. He whispers to your heart the truth you need most tonight. Let me be first. Let me be your peace. Let me carry what you cannot. Let me guide where you fear to walk. Let me reorder what has grown tangled. Let me heal what has been wounded. And as you sit with this whisper, something inside you shifts, not dramatically, but deeply. A space opens where fear once sat. A calm settles where tension once lived. A trust begins where worry once ruled. It feels like a beginning, even though the day is ending. It feels like God preparing your heart for rest, not just sleep, but rest of the soul. Before this part draws to a close, take one more quiet moment. Place into God's hands whatever weighs on you tonight. Place into His heart whatever attachment you have held too tightly, and let His peace begin to form in you the way it formed in Israel when they let God lead them through David. Peace that is deeper than understanding, peace that is stronger than fear, peace that comes from letting God be God in your life. As the night deepens and the soft quiet of evening settles around you, your heart remains open in this sacred space where God's presence gently surrounds every thought. What began earlier as a reflection on gratitude and ordered love now moves into something deeper. A quiet awareness that God is working in your soul even as the world outside grows still. It is in these hours where distractions fade and the spirit becomes more honest that God often speaks the clearest. And as you remain here, allowing His peace to rest upon you like a warm blanket, you begin to see how the lessons of Scripture weave themselves gently into the small and ordinary spaces of your life. The image of the tribes of Israel coming to David remains vivid in your reflection. They approached him with humility, saying, "We are your bone and flesh," acknowledging not only their shared humanity, but their unity under God's plan. They had learned, sometimes painfully, that peace does not flourish where pride leads. Their decision to accept David as God's chosen shepherd brought healing to a fractured nation. In their obedience, they found purpose. In their surrender, they found unity. And as this thought lingers, you begin to see a reflection of your own life in theirs. Not in the grand scale of nations, but in the kingdom of your heart where decisions, desires, and attachments constantly rise and clash. You begin to notice that your own interior tribes, your desires, fears, ambitions, and emotions are often divided. Some parts trust God easily, others resist. Some rise in faith, others cling to control. Some surrender, others grasp tightly at certainty. But tonight, you sense God inviting all these inner tribes to come together under His gentle kingship. Just as Israel found peace when they embraced God's chosen order, your heart finds peace when your desires bend to God's will. The scattered pieces within you gather when God becomes the center. And in this realization, you glimpse the quiet secret of spiritual harmony. Peace grows where pride kneels. As you breathe slowly, letting this truth settle deeper, your thoughts turn toward Bishop Fulton Sheen's words. What we overlove, we often overgrieve. You reflect on the moments of your life when grief felt heavy. Not only grief over loss, but grief over change, disappointment, or unmet expectations. You begin to see that sometimes the pain was sharper not because the situation was unbearable, but because your heart had placed too much weight on the wrong things. You had loved a dream, a plan, or a season so fiercely that losing it felt like losing yourself. But now in hindsight, you also see how each of those moments eventually brought you somewhere better, closer to God, wiser, more compassionate, more anchored in what truly matters. You realize that grief itself was not a sign of God's absence. It was a sign of the heart learning to reorder itself. Every sorrow became a teacher, guiding you back to the one who never changes. Every loss peeled away a layer of attachment so something purer could take root. And tonight, with this new understanding, you feel grateful not only for the joys God has given, but for the sorrows that reshaped you. Your mind travels next to the holy souls in purgatory, the ones you remember with tenderness this month. You think of them in a new way, as companions on the journey toward purified love. They are not lost, they are being perfected. Their longing for God is a reminder that the soul is made for Him alone. And as you reflect on their process of purification, you begin to see your own small purifications in a gentler light. Every time you detach from something that holds you back spiritually, you taste a little of their journey. Every time you surrender your pride or let go of an unhealthy attachment, you draw closer to the simplicity of heart that leads to God. Their longing becomes a mirror for your own deepest desire, to love God above all things, to rest fully in Him, to find your identity not in the world but in His gaze. Here in the stillness, this truth becomes undeniable. When God is first, everything else finds its place. You think of the people in your life, family, friends, co-workers, even strangers whose paths briefly cross yours. You think of how often human relationships get weighed down by expectations, fears, and unspoken hopes. And yet, when God is first, the love you give and receive becomes purer. It becomes less about needing others to fulfill you, and more about wanting God to bless them. It becomes less possessive and more free. It becomes less anxious and more generous. You begin to understand that loving rightly frees everyone, yourself included. Your heart widens as you reflect on those who guided you with patience, the ones you gave thanks for earlier. You see them as instruments of God's care, some gently leading, some challenging you, some teaching you through their example. And you realize something humbling. Just as God used others to guide you, He desires to use you to guide others as well. Not through authority or force, but through patience, humility, and love. Someone in your life might be looking to your example without you even knowing it. Someone might need your quiet encouragement. Someone might need your forgiveness. Someone might need the consistency of your presence. Someone might need the steadiness of your faith. And tonight, God invites you to be an instrument of His peace, a vessel of His guidance, just as others have been for you. As this awareness settles into your heart, your thoughts begin drifting toward the prayers you said earlier, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the acts of contrition and hope. You realize that these prayers were not meant only for recitation. They were meant to form you. The words you prayed shape your interior world, guiding your thoughts, softening your emotions, deepening your trust. The Our Father reminds you that God's will is always aimed at your good. The Hail Mary teaches you humility, obedience, and receptivity to God. The act of contrition teaches you freedom through repentance. Each prayer is a thread woven into the fabric of your soul, making you more like Christ. You begin sensing God's invitation for the night ahead. Let me reorder what is disordered. Let me calm what is anxious. Let me guide what is uncertain. You feel the soft pull of grace drawing you to release lingering tensions from the day. Perhaps there were moments that troubled you, words spoken too quickly, emotions stirred too deeply, responsibilities that left you feeling stretched thin. Tonight, God invites you to lay them down. Not later, not tomorrow morning, now. You breathe again, and with each breath, you surrender another piece of the day. You let go of arguments that replay in your mind. You release worries that try to cling to your future. You give God your exhaustion, your disappointments, your hopes. You give Him the people you love, trusting that He cares for them more than you ever could. You give Him the parts of your heart that still hold too tightly. In this act of surrender, you feel a deepening calm, a calm that is not from the absence of problems, but from the presence of God. This peace is a sign that your heart is learning humility, leaning into God rather than yourself. And in this peace, a gentle truth rises like a quiet whisper. You do not have to figure everything out tonight. God is leading, God is guiding, God is holding, God is first. The night grows deeper, yet your heart feels lighter than it did when the sun first set. As you continue resting in this sacred quiet, you notice how the layers of the day have slowly peeled away, leaving only the essential truth that God is here. The noise of responsibilities, expectations, and tasks has faded. The voices of worry have softened, and in the stillness that remains, God begins to reveal things that could not be seen in the brightness and busyness of daylight. Evening has its own grace, a grace of honest reflection, where you can finally acknowledge the parts of your soul that you often rush past. You begin to see more clearly the gentle connection between the scripture you reflected on and your own life. Israel's surrender to David was not only an act of political unity, it was an act of spiritual maturity. They stopped grasping for their own version of control. They stopped resisting God's plan because of personal preferences or ambitions. They allowed themselves to be led, even when their pride wanted to resist. And this is where true peace was born. You realize that this same invitation is given to you tonight. Peace awaits you when you stop striving to be the sole author of your own story and allow God to write the chapters He has prepared. As your thoughts drift deeper, you sense how often life becomes tangled when you insist on your own way. You think of moments when you pushed ahead without waiting for God's guidance, moments when impatience clouded your decisions, moments when you clung to something so tightly that you lost your ability to hear God's whisper. And slowly, truth settles over you. Peace cannot flourish where self-will reigns. Peace grows where humility kneels. You hold that realization for a moment, letting it sink into the places within you that need this reminder. Humility is not self-neglect or weakness, it is freedom. Freedom from the pressure to control outcomes. Freedom from the fear of losing. Freedom from the exhausting need to appear strong. Humility is the soul's quiet recognition that God knows better. It is the gentle surrender that says, "Lead me, Lord, even when I do not understand." And tonight, this humility begins to soften the soil of your heart. Your reflections move naturally toward Bishop Fulton Sheen's words once more. What we overlove, we often overgrieve. You feel the truth of this statement more deeply now. You look back on times when you placed your happiness entirely in human hands, on fragile foundations that could never fully carry you. And when the inevitable shifts of life came, when relationships changed, when expectations fell through, when life moved in unexpected directions, the grief was heavy because your heart was clinging too tightly. You grieved not only the loss, but the way your identity had become entwined with it. But now in this evening's gentle clarity, you see the deeper wisdom in Sheen's insight. Proper love brings peace. Ordered love brings balance. When God is first, losses do not destroy us. They shape us. When God is first, attachments no longer imprison, they enrich. When God is first, grief does not crush. It teaches. Yet this truth is not learned quickly. It is learned night by night, surrender by surrender, breath by breath. And tonight is one of those nights where the heart quietly shifts toward right order. Your mind drifts now to the holy souls, the ones you hold in your evening prayers. Their purification, seen through the eyes of faith, teaches a beautiful truth. Every attachment that is not rooted in God must be gently untangled so the soul can be fully free. Their longing becomes a reminder of your own longing for God, often buried beneath layers of distraction. Their journey mirrors your own interior purification, slow, steady, sometimes painful, but always directed toward perfect love. In remembering them, you feel your own heart being purified, simplified, clarified, drawn toward what truly matters. You pause, breathing deeply, letting the night settle around you like a protective mantle. And in this breath, you begin to notice the subtle ways God guided you today, even when you weren't fully aware of it. Perhaps He softened your reaction in a moment of irritation. Perhaps He stirred compassion where frustration wanted to grow. Perhaps He brought someone to mind for a silent prayer. Perhaps He nudged you to hold your tongue, to take a breath, to listen more deeply. These little graces are the quiet fingerprints of God on your day. And if you look closely, you see how these gentle touches are shaping you into someone more peaceful, more patient, more aligned with God's will. It becomes clear that holiness is not built in grand gestures, but in the small decisions that lean toward love, humility, and trust. You feel grateful for the unseen ways God molded your heart today, smoothing rough edges and softening rigid places. Spiritual growth is rarely dramatic. It is often subtle, slow, and quiet, just like this night. Your thoughts shift, and suddenly you find yourself reflecting on your own relationships. The people God has placed in your life now and in the past. You see how each one has shaped you, how each interaction has become part of your story. You remember those who loved you with patience, those who forgave you when you faltered, those who challenged you to grow, and even those whose absence taught you to lean more heavily on God. Every one of them, even unintentionally, has been part of the tapestry God weaves. And as you reflect, gratitude rises again, not only for the pleasant moments, but also for the difficult ones that refined your character. You sense that God is inviting you tonight to see these relationships the way He sees them, through the eyes of mercy. You feel nudged to forgive those who hurt you, not because they were right, but because forgiveness frees your heart. You feel nudged to pray for those who misunderstand you, trusting that God sees what others may not. You feel nudged to bless those who are distant, knowing that every person is held in God's care. You feel nudged to let go of invisible burdens, resentments, disappointments, unrealistic expectations, and let God reorder your emotional world. He does not ask you to forget the past, but to allow Him to heal it. The deeper the night becomes, the more clearly you feel God's invitation to rest in Him. Not simply physical rest, but spiritual rest. Rest from worry, rest from striving, rest from carrying the weight of things that were never yours to hold. There is a moment when the soul simply says, "Enough for today. God, you take it now." And in this moment, peace begins to rise. You breathe again, slower now, and a quiet truth begins to echo inside your spirit. God has never asked you to carry tomorrow tonight. He has never asked you to fix everything at once. He has never demanded perfection from a weary heart. All He asks for is trust. It is trust that transforms your night from restless to restful. It is trust that allows the soul to release tension. It is trust that whispers, God is still guiding, God is still leading, God is still here. And as this truth fills you, something within you relaxes. It is as though your soul itself exhales, letting go of invisible pressures. You feel God's presence more intimately now, not as a distant judge, but as a tender father, a loving shepherd, a protective king. You sense Him drawing near to the places that ache, offering peace to the fears you have not voiced, and strength to the doubts that linger. You feel Him reminding you gently that you do not have to be strong for Him. He is strong for you. This moment, this gentle stretch of evening, is where transformation happens. Not through effort, but through surrender. Not through answers, but through presence. And in this sacred stillness, you find yourself whispering inside, "Lead me, Lord. Lead me through this night. Lead me through my thoughts. Lead me into rest. Lead me where peace can grow." The night deepens further, settling into that quiet hour when distractions fade and the soul becomes more honest with itself. You are no longer thinking in hurried fragments the way you did earlier in the day. Instead, your thoughts move slowly, gently, like soft waves brushing the edge of a shore. This is the time when God often speaks the clearest, not through thunder or visions, but through the quiet transformation of your heart. And tonight, you feel that transformation continuing, shaping you in ways you didn't expect when the evening first began. As you rest in this deeper silence, you begin to reflect on the beautiful mystery of surrender. You realize now that surrender is not a single moment, but a rhythm, a steady returning of your heart to God throughout the day. It is choosing trust even when your emotions protest. It is choosing peace even when anxiety wants to dominate. It is choosing humility when pride demands control. And as you breathe, you notice that something inside you has softened. Your grip on your worries feels lighter. Your attachment to outcomes less rigid. Your fear of the unknown less powerful. This is the quiet fruit of surrender. In this peaceful place, your thoughts return to the scripture from earlier, the tribes of Israel coming to David in unity. You understand now that their unity did not happen by accident. It came after conflict, after fragmentation, after wandering. Their unity came when they reached the end of themselves. There is something profoundly human about that. Often, you too seek unity within yourself only after you have exhausted your attempts to manage everything alone. And yet, God welcomes you even in that late hour of realization. He does not shame your reluctance. He simply receives your return. You take a moment to reflect on how often God has been patient with you, far more patient than you have been with yourself. When you resisted his guidance, he did not force you. When you delayed in obedience, he did not withdraw his presence. When you held tightly to your fears, he did not abandon you. He waited, he watched, he invited. And each time you took even a small step toward him, he met you with grace. Tonight, that patience becomes even more precious to you. It reveals God's heart in a way no words can fully express. As you rest deeper into this realization, you begin to think about the attachments you carry, those emotional knots that weigh down the soul more than you realize. You think of habits you fall back into when you are tired. You think of patterns that pull your attention away from God. You think of the way you sometimes chase comfort rather than truth, or familiarity rather than holiness. There is no condemnation here, only a quiet awareness. God is revealing these places not to burden you, but to free you. He is shining light gently, like a candle illuminating a dark corner, allowing you to see what needs healing. You let that light shine for a moment longer. You begin to see how some attachments have become heavier than you expected. Certain ambitions that once brought excitement may now bring pressure. Certain relationships that once brought joy may now require forgiveness. Certain habits that once felt harmless may now cloud your spiritual clarity. But as this awareness settles, you also feel a quiet invitation rising within. Let it go. Not all at once and not by force, but little by little, night by night, prayer by prayer. God leads you patiently because he understands the fragile nature of the human heart. You breathe again, slowly this time, and notice how the night air seems to carry a sense of sacred renewal. With each breath, you feel God replacing heaviness with peace. It is not the dramatic peace you sometimes imagine, not a sudden wave that overwhelms, but a steady, gentle calm that takes root deep inside your spirit. It is the calm that comes from knowing that God sees everything, your wounds, your fears, your efforts, your failures, and still calls you beloved. Your thoughts shift naturally now toward the holy souls once again. As you prayed earlier, you felt a certain nearness to them, an understanding that they too are learning surrender, humility, and purification. Their longing for God teaches your own heart to long for him more sincerely. Their purification teaches you the importance of continual conversion. Their hope strengthens yours. And as you hold them in prayer, you realize that praying for the holy souls is not merely an act of charity, it is an act of spiritual companionship. You walk toward heaven together. This realization widens your sense of belonging. You begin to recognize that you are not alone on your spiritual path. You are surrounded by the saints who intercede, by the angels who guard, by the holy souls who await glory, by the church on earth who journeys with you. In this quiet night, you feel the communion of the saints wrap around you like a warm blanket. You are part of something larger, something eternal, something holy, and this belonging gives you strength. Your mind drifts again toward your own life, the relationships you treasure, the people you carry in your heart. Evening often brings clarity that daytime rush obscures. You begin to see moments when you reacted hastily, when you spoke too quickly, when you misunderstood someone, when you let stress dictate your tone. But rather than feeling shame, you feel a gentle longing to grow. You want to love more patiently tomorrow, to listen more deeply, to forgive more freely, to speak more kindly. You want your heart to reflect God's patience, God's tenderness, God's mercy. This desire becomes a quiet prayer within you. You ask God to shape your heart like his, not through force, but through daily grace. You ask him to help you love those around you with gentleness, to guide your words, to strengthen your patience, to deepen your compassion. And in this moment of prayer, you feel a quiet confidence rising. God will answer this prayer because he planted the desire within you. Growth is already unfolding, even if slowly, even if silently. The night now feels holy, as though heaven has drawn a little closer to the earth. And in this peaceful quiet, you feel a shift in the way you see your struggles. You begin to understand that every burden you carry today has been an invitation to trust, to surrender, to grow. You see that your challenges are not punishments, they are pathways. Your uncertainties are not signs of God's absence. They are places where his guidance becomes clearer. Your weaknesses are not failures, they are openings where his strength enters. You pause, letting this truth settle deep. God is not waiting for you to prove yourself. He is waiting for you to trust Him. He is not asking you to be unbreakable. He is asking you to be open. He is not demanding perfection. He is offering transformation. And in this realization, you feel a sense of spiritual rest washing over you. This rest leads you to reflect on the fragility of human control. How often have you tried to shape outcomes, predict uncertainties, solve every problem before it arises? And how often has this led only to exhaustion? Tonight, you finally allow your heart to step out of that cycle. You give God the pieces you tried to hold together on your own, the worries, the pressures, the expectations. And as you release them, a quiet truth emerges. God can carry these far better than you ever could. You remain in this surrender for a long moment, allowing your spirit to simply be in the presence of God. You feel held. You feel known. You feel protected. You feel guided. The night no longer feels heavy. It feels sacred. The silence no longer feels empty. It feels full. And your heart no longer feels burdened. It feels peaceful. As you close your eyes, you let one final prayer rise gently within you. Lead me closer to you, Lord, tonight and every night. Teach me to trust what you choose. Teach me to love what you love. Teach me to rest in your will. And in the quiet that follows, you sense God's answer, not in words, but in peace. The night is now at its quietest point, the kind of stillness where even your breathing feels sacred, where the world seems wrapped in a soft veil of God's presence. In this deep silence, something awakens in your heart, a gentle awareness that you are not simply ending a day, but being reshaped by it. The reflections that have unfolded through the evening have softened your spirit, aligned your thoughts toward God, and lifted weights you didn't realize you were carrying. Now, as you reach the final stretch of this night's journey, you discover a deeper calm settling into your soul. You begin to notice how God has been speaking to you, not through visions or dramatic signs, but through the quiet reordering of your heart. That is how God usually works, especially in the evening hours. He whispers in moments of clarity. He touches your emotions with gentle conviction. He lifts your burdens without you noticing until suddenly they feel lighter. Tonight has been one of those nights where grace has done its quiet work inside you. Your thoughts wander once more to the scripture from 2 Samuel, the moment when the tribes of Israel approached David and acknowledged him as their king under God's command. Earlier, you reflected on their surrender as a symbol of spiritual humility, but now in this deeper hour, you see it as something even more profound, a moment of identity. Israel finally accepted who they were meant to be under the leadership God had chosen, and in doing so, they found peace. You realize that your own spiritual journey requires a similar acceptance. God calls you to recognize your identity, not the one shaped by insecurity or fear, but the one rooted in His love. You are His. You belong to Him. You are not defined by your failures, your past, or the expectations of others. You are defined by the one who created you, redeemed you, and continues to guide you every day. Recognizing this identity brings a sense of peace that no earthly achievement can provide. As you reflect on this truth, your heart feels more anchored than it did earlier. You begin to see how many decisions in life become simpler when your identity is secure in God. You no longer need to strive for approval in the same exhausting way. You no longer need to fear rejection with the same intensity. You no longer need to cling to control as tightly. When you know who you are in God, everything else becomes clearer. Not easier, but clearer. And this clarity is a gift that often comes only in the quiet of night. Your thoughts then move gently toward Bishop Fulton Sheen's wisdom once more. What we overlove, we often overgrieve. Earlier, these words invited you to reorder your attachments. Now they reveal something even deeper. You understand that grief is not simply about losing people or things. It is often about losing illusions. You grieve when you lose control you never truly had. You grieve when you lose expectations that were never realistic. You grieve when you lose versions of the future that God never intended. Proper grief, though painful, becomes a teacher, guiding you toward a love that is free, pure, and rightly ordered. You begin to see that some of your past griefs were invitations to grow closer to God. Times when you felt something was taken from you were often moments when God was making space for something better. Times when relationships changed were moments when God was protecting you from paths not meant for you. Times when your plans fell apart were moments when God was redirecting you gently, even if you did not understand at the time. And as this truth settles in, gratitude begins to rise. Gratitude even for the painful chapters, because they shaped your heart and deepened your faith. At this hour, gratitude feels different than it does during the day. In the quiet, your gratitude becomes contemplative, not rushed. You feel thankful not only for blessings, but for the ways God has carried you through storms. You feel thankful for the people who loved you, but also for the ones who tested your patience and strengthened your character. You feel thankful for prayers God answered, and even for the ones He did not answer, because now you understand why. Everything in your life, every joy, every wound, every detour, has been woven into God's mysterious and loving plan, and the night makes that easier to see. Your reflections turn now toward the holy souls again, and you feel a renewed sense of connection. The prayers you offered earlier echo gently in your memory, reminding you that love extends beyond this world. You feel the communion with the souls who journey toward heaven, and for a moment, you find comfort in knowing that your prayers make a difference. The holy souls teach you that purification is always an expression of God's mercy. Nothing impure enters heaven, not because God rejects, but because He completes. He heals. He restores. Thinking of their journey inspires you to embrace your own purification more willingly. The ways God is shaping you tonight, the letting go, the trust, the humility, these are the very things that create spiritual freedom. You begin to realize that holiness is not about perfection. It is about leaning more heavily on God. It is about letting Him take the places where you are fragile and turning them into places where grace can grow. You hold this realization gently for a moment before letting your thoughts drift toward tomorrow. Normally, thoughts of tomorrow might bring worry or pressure, but tonight, something feels different. You do not feel overwhelmed. Instead, you feel guided. You feel as though God is already preparing the path you will walk when the sun rises. You sense that He goes before you, clearing obstacles you cannot see, strengthening you for conversations you will have, and giving you grace for challenges you cannot yet anticipate. This confidence settles in your heart, not as excitement, but as peace. Peace that tomorrow does not require fear. Peace that you will not walk alone. Peace that every step you take is held within God's providential care. You breathe deeply, letting that peace expand inside of you. It fills spaces that once held anxiety. It replaces tension with trust. It transforms uncertainty into quiet assurance. Your reflections now move gently toward the relationships you carry in your heart, the people you love, the people you miss, the people you pray for. You think of those who rely on your strength, those who have guided you, and those who need your forgiveness. Evening brings compassion to the surface. You begin to feel a softening toward those who have hurt you, not because what happened was insignificant, but because you long to be free. Forgiveness becomes less of a struggle and more of a gift you offer, to them and to yourself. You ask God to bless each person you carry within you. You ask Him to guide the lost, comfort the suffering, heal the wounded, and strengthen the weary. You ask Him to give wisdom to those who lead, grace to those who serve, and protection to those who are vulnerable. Your prayer becomes a wide circle, reaching beyond your immediate world to touch strangers, enemies, nations, and the church itself. You begin to feel that this, too, is part of your identity. Being someone who intercedes, someone who carries love quietly, someone who brings others before God with sincerity. The night continues to cradle you as these reflections deepen. You sense that something in you has shifted over the course of this evening. The burdens you carried earlier do not feel as heavy. The fears you entertained do not feel as loud. The uncertainties that tug at you seem less intimidating. It is as though God has been slowly collecting every worry you placed before Him, whispering, "Rest, I am here," and He is. You feel Him now, not in emotion, but in steady assurance. He is near. As your thoughts settle into this calm, you feel one final invitation rising within your heart. Rest in God completely, not partially, not hesitantly, but fully. Rest in His will. Rest in His timing. Rest in His mercy. Rest in His strength. You feel the night drawing to a close with the gentle reminder that God's presence is not bound by the rising and setting of the sun. He will be with you when you wake. He will be with you as you move through your day. He will be with you in moments of joy and moments of struggle, and He will guide you back to this quiet place of peace the next time evening arrives. You take one final deep breath, letting everything settle. You feel grateful for this night, for its clarity, for its grace, for its gentle renewal. You whisper in your heart a final prayer. Lead me, Lord, every day, every night, every moment. All that I am, I place in your hands. And the peace that follows is the unmistakable peace of God. If this journey has touched your heart, please like this video to help more people find it. Share it with someone who needs peace tonight. Subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss an evening prayer. And in the comments, share your intentions so we can lift you up in prayer.